We're really fortunate tonight to have Matt Wingard with us. He's a Oregon House representative. He's been the deputy Republican leader. Matt is recognized for his legislative knowledge and his understanding of the issues, so we're very fortunate to have him with us. He's a believer in individual responsibility, limited government, property rights, and free market. Every time I've heard Matt talk, he's always had some really good things to share. So Matt, we'd like to have you share with us some of your thoughts from the recent legislative session. Yeah. And where do we go from here? Matt, let's welcome Matt.
Hi everyone, good group from Benton County.
Yeah. Well, this is a small group.
Well, I hope it wasn't me.
Yeah.
Labor Day weekend.
How many people in here is your state representative, Sarah Gelser? Not quite half of you. So the rest of you are just outside of that. Is it Andy Olson or?
No. Frank Moore.
Well, he's your senator.
Yes, that's
So he's your senator. So it's either Andy Olson or Sarah Gelser.
Jim Thompson.
Well, then it's not Frank Moore's.
Jim Thompson has a little chunk of the.
Yeah, that would be that senator is Brian Boquist. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody back to their seats. So 2 years. So I was elected in 2008. Came in we were a super minority in the House. We held our first meeting in a little broom closet, and then put up a plaque to commemorate that meeting. We all looked around and decided that this is probably going to get real rough. Sure enough, that session was pretty rough. Let me tell you a little bit about why elections matter. So 2 years ago, we were in a super minority, and the legislature passed $1.7 billion in tax and fee increases. It spent absolutely every dime it had, and then it didn't put any aside. And then, of course, when the revenue projections did not come in at the rate that they would have liked, even though while we were passing those budgets, 600,000 Americans were losing their job every month, and some of us were standing up saying, these revenue projections you're looking at probably are not going to turn out with so many millions of people becoming unemployed. We are, after all, an income tax state. Emphasis on the word income in order to have tax revenue. But they ignored us, and then got out of Dodge and refused to come back into session to target the cuts that were necessary, because obviously the budgets, there was not enough money for the budgets they passed. So they let the governor do across-the-board cuts, which ended up being about 9%. And it didn't matter whether it was elderly people who needed medication, or somebody in a wheelchair needed equipment, or kids in public schools, or the DEQ, or the Division of Land and Conservation. No prioritization at all, just across-the-board cuts. But in the meantime, there was this occasional gathering of people in the hinterlands. They gave themselves a name, Tea Party, and they kept meeting and growing larger and suggesting that maybe things were going to change in November. We had quite an election in November, didn't we?
Yes.
Say what you will about the current President of the United States, this guy gets Republicans elected to office. When all the dust settled on the November election, this president had erased the New Deal. More Republicans elected in this country than we'd seen since 1928.
Wow.
Since 1928. We're talking about state legislators, governors, secretaries of state, attorney generals. If they are mayors and city councils out there that are partisan elections, count it all up, 4,000 Republicans elected across the country. I think we're in a no-lose scenario next election. One of two things is going to happen. Either we're going to replace him, or he's going to get a second term, and by the time he leaves office, we will have McKinley-level Republican elected levels in the country. I mean, we're talking about practically every state legislature in the country. We already have more governors elected right now than we've had since FDR was elected. I mean, like I said, this guy gets Republicans elected. I thought Clinton was good at it, but this president puts him to shame. So we had a tie. We went from being 6 down to an even tie in the Oregon House, 30-30. And evil Dave Hunt, Speaker of the House, who ran the worst personal smear campaign in Oregon history against me, and ran some pretty despicable campaigns against some others. Well, his caucus got together and decided that he wasn't the man they wanted to put forward in a 30-30 tie, so they took away his speakership, and they made him the Democrat leader, and they put forward Arnie Roebling. P.S. 3 hours after we sine-died in June, they met again and threw him out of leadership altogether. They were so tired of him. So now we think he's leaving. We think he's going to run for Clackamas County chair, which, yeah, I live in Clackamas County, but still, getting him out of the legislature is a pretty good thing. So they said, you know what, you'll never be able to make 30-30 work. You know, just everybody will be a stalemate, be like the Cold War, you know, nothing will happen. But that's not what happened. That's not what happened. We came in to session from February to June, and there were no tax increases. Very, very minor fee increases occasionally, because we were, after all, negotiating from a 30-30 tie, but nothing more than at the most 8% for the biennium, and that was only occasionally allowed. In most cases, no fee increases at all. And we set aside the largest ending fund balance that anybody can remember. So I'm going to say in Oregon history. $460 million. It's penetrating. It's getting out there. I like that. $460 million. Now this is all money we don't actually have. It's based on the projections that the economists believe is going to come in from the 2-year budget period that started on July 1st. But we set aside that of all this pretend money, or anticipated money, we set aside $460 million of it so that if it doesn't all materialize, the first thing that starts to evaporate is the ending fund balance, not actual cuts to programs for vulnerable people and school days for kids. They fought us every step of the way. We put Dennis Richardson in the co-chair position. And by the way, the whole 30-30 tie almost came completely undone because they had no problem with Bruce Hanna being the co-speaker. They knew we would make Dennis the co-chair of Ways and Means, and they literally were willing to not come to an agreement with us. They were so frightened of that. And we have some squirrely members, some of you may know, who voted for a tax increase last time around, who were kind of circling that. They're hoping that they might get to be the Ways and Means chair. And our members just dug in their heels and said, we'll go back into minority status rather than not have Dennis Richardson as the Ways and Means chair. They blinked. We got Dennis Richardson, and that's why you got the sound policies that you did out of this session. Dennis insisted on that large ending fund balance. We just got our first quarterly update this week on the revenue projections, and it's $2 million down from where they thought it would be. So $200 million of the 400.